Good evening. I would like to call to order the June 14th, 2017 Planning Commission meeting. At this time, I will turn it over to the commission to proceed with the meeting.
Gentlemen, since we do not have our chairman or vice chairman, we need a motion to appoint a chair pro tem.
I'll make a motion to appoint a chair pro tem,
Second,
and then you have to.
and
make
it
a
would be,
We need a name.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you said we had to make a motion, and then we had to make a subsequent motion to say who it is.
We can do it that way, I guess.
I'll make a motion to appoint Julio to be mayor pro tem for today's meeting.
I second the motion.
So be it. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you. All right. So we have the four of us before you, and the other ones are missing. We're going to make it simple. So why don't we stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance?
we need a roll call.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Introduction, staff.
Stacy Webb, Secretary for Planning and Development.
Adam Koenig, standing in for Cody Martin, District Attorney's Office.
Jerome Fournier, Director of Planning and Development.
Eric Poche, planner for the parish.
Lance Brock, zoning official.
Sean Chereau, Engineering Review Agency.
Thank you very much. Chairman doesn't have any comments. I just want to take a moment to say today that we had a very tragic event in Washington, D.C., where one of our congressmen here in Louisiana was shot. And personally, and hope on behalf of the commission and everybody else, I want to wish Congressman Scalise a full recovery. Pray for him and his family. I think an attack like this on our elected officials, regardless of their party affiliation or their position on issues, is absolutely a tragic event and an attack on our quality of life. And it saddens me that we've come to a point in our society where we don't value life any more than this. With that, we'll get to the minutes. I need a motion for approval of the minutes.
A motion to approve the minutes from
I
the
second
previous
the
meeting.
motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
We don't have anything on the consent agenda. First item on the public hearing is the family partition for the John L. Gautreaux property, lots 2N1 and 2N2.
Ellen Jackson with McLean Taylor Incorporated, asking for your approval.
Staff, any comments?
That, and as soon as they submit the donation articles, if it's approved, we can move it forward.
Any issues with the shed? On lot 2N, encroachment into the new lot 2N1?
This want to be moved.
No.
It can stay or it has to move?
The shed on which, 2N2?
On lot 2N,
Oh, to be moved.
Encroaches into-
Yes,
Want to be moved.
yes, that is going to be moved, correct.
all right? Any comments from the commissioners?
What about it said we recommend approval contingent on addressing comments as listed above. Have those been addressed or do we need to make the motion
The
contingent?
comments on the map have been addressed. All we would need, if it gains approval, is to have the transference documents or the conveyance documents submitted to our office, and then we can get the plat signed, which we'll hold until that occurs.
All right, so we don't need it, so it wouldn't need to be a conditional motion at all? Or
Well, I
would we have
mean,
to-
yeah, you could just make it contingent on all staff comments being addressed.
Make a motion to approve contingent on all staff comments being addressed?
I second the motion.
For points of clarification, does that include moving the shed?
Yeah, I think you have to have
I
a,
think-
I think you have to have a public hearing.
Yeah,
Oh,
we
I'm
have a
sorry,
public
yes,
hearing,
my
yeah.
apologies. Okay, so we're going to open up the public hearing. Anybody speak on this matter? Nobody? All right, we'll close the public hearing. Right, now go. Wade?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had a few questions, and namely, so if you're going to have a daycare, do you have multiple entrances that you plan on having for this? Oh, no, I'm sorry, that's the wrong one.
Yeah.
That's what I was checking on.
You're on 9A.
9A, that's the one I needed. Never mind.
How much time you need to move that shed? So 6 months will do.
After the way it's been raining lately, it may not.
It'll be dry in the fall.
The plat, it does say on the plat to be moved next to the shed, so do we have to incorporate that in the motion anyway, even though it's on the plat, or?
It's just a matter of timing. There's, why it to be moved is an endless time. so-
Okay.
so,
Then I'll make a motion to approve, well, did we close public hearing yet?
Yes.
Okay, then I'll make a motion to approve contingent on staff comments being addressed and on the shed being moved within 6 months.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay. Item number 9B, the Riley Denham property, lots 5C2A and 5C2B.
Good evening. Clint Quintmall, representing Earls and Associates. All comments have been addressed. Asking the Planning Commission for approval.
Yeah, the comments have been addressed on the map, and we would just be waiting if approved for the conveyance documents.
Counselor, I think this question is mostly for you than it is to the applicant, but item number 9B and 9C are relatives, and they're basically the same application. In the interest of time, can we hear both of them at the same time and open one hearing for both of them?
Because I don't know the answer to that, Mr. Morton didn't give me any guidance on that, just
Better not.
to have the record clear. If we
Okay.
can just do them separate
All right,
to
so
avoid any confusion.
let's open the public hearing. Anybody to speak on item number 9B? Nobody? All right, well, we're going to close the public hearing. Any comments from the commissioners?
Somebody else want to make a motion?
In that case, I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Second.
Second?
Second,
Second by Mr. Bishop? Oh, no?
that's fine.
Okay. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, you're approved.
Okay.
Item number 9C, the Riley Denham property, lots 5C4A and 5C4B.
Yeah, both these plats, including the two after this, in order to save money, the heirs decided to all do these at the same time. And that's how we usually approach our clients. If we can do survey work while we're out there, we encourage them to do so. So the situation with these two plats, as well as the two following, are in conjunction to heir property that is all being done at the same time.
Right.
All comments have been addressed.
Right, we'll open up the public hearing. Anybody to speak on this one? Nobody? We'll close the public hearing. We have a motion.
I move to approve.
I second.
Okay,
Aye.
all in favor?
Aye.
Moving right along. Item number 9CD, the Nelson Gotro property, lots B1A and B1B.
Yeah, and all comments have been addressed. Asking for approval.
Yes, all comments have been addressed.
All right, we'll open up the public hearing. Anybody to speak on this item? I'll close the public hearing, seeing none. The only question I have is the trailer encroaching into utility easement. Is that going to remain, or is it going to be moved, or does it have to be moved?
It's an existing non-conforming use. It's been there since the original lot was created.
Correct.
So no issue there. Okay,
Correct.
just want to confirm, that's all.
Motion to approve?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Approved. Item number 9E, Nelson Gotro property lots C1 and C2.
All comments that have been addressed. Same thing with the trailer. I don't know if that's supposed to be called at the permit stage, but it's existing and within the building setback and servitude.
Yes, it's the same, basically the same as the previous lot.
Okay. Let's open up the public hearing. Anybody to speak on this item? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing.
Did y'all ever get the issue resolved about the name? Is it Junior? Does it supposed to say Junior on the property or on the plat description? There's a question on here about the Darren Gotro not being the person who can be the recipient.
Yeah, I believe that was a typo. So on the corrected plat, we have the daughter. Right there.
I still have it on my list.
Yeah, I don't know, we must not have gotten the corrected plat.
Just, well, sometimes they send the revisions in before they get to go out in the packet, so I've got the revised copy.
So it's been taken care of?
Yeah, it's been
fine?
taken care of.
Okay. Good. In that case, I make a motion to approve.
Second?
Aye.
Aye.
In favor?
Aye.
All right. Item number 9F, Donald D. Candell property lots SD-1-A-1 and SD-1-A-2.
Okay. Just wanted to briefly discuss the item number 4. And so we adjusted the plat to have ownership touching the 20-foot servitude of passage based on Planning Commission, Planning Department recommendations. And so that adjustment has been made on item number 4. The other items were just basic typos and
Yes,
duplicate statements.
Mr. Quinmore is referring to the prohibition on two intersecting servitudes of passage. So the property boundaries were revised so that an additional or new servitude of passage did not have to be created to access the lot.
Okay. So you just have some other typos to correct on this, so this could be done subject, to you addressing those other remaining comments.
They have been addressed. They're just probably not in the packet, but
Yes.
Eric does have them, yes.
Yes, I have them.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, let's open a public hearing. Anybody to speak on this issue? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing. Commissioners?
Then I move to approve.
Second the motion.
Aye.
All
Aye.
in favor? Aye. Thank you very much. Approved. Item number 9FG, the Todd LSR property lots A4A and A4B.
And we just added the note for the adjoiner, the user of the private servitude of passage to sign the plat, as well as indicating the 7.5-foot servitude on each side of the northern portion of lot A4B and A4A, as indicated on the previous plat.
Yes, all comments have been addressed.
Okay. We'll open up the public hearing. Anybody to speak on this issue? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing. Commissioners?
Yep. In that case, I'm going to move to approve.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Approved. Thank you very much. Item number 9H, Kenneth Jeffrey on property lots K1, K2, K3, K4, and K5.
Yes, all comments have been addressed. There was a little drainage servitude that was on the front of K1 by the servitude of passage that has been added. And other comments have been addressed and adjusted.
Yes, I have all comments have been addressed.
All right. Any other comments, staff?
Yeah, all the comments have been addressed.
I move for approval.
Well, wait. We gotta open a public
I
hearing.
thought we already did.
No.
All right.
Jump the gun.
So let's open a public hearing. Anybody speak on this matter? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing.
Well, in that case, now I
No,
move.
Commissioner Bishop.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Approved. finally, item number 9I, the John K. Parker property, tracks S1 and S2.
Yeah, all comments have been addressed. We're gonna go ahead and, move some things around to go ahead and put the users of the servitude to sign the plat. And so I will have them listed, so they're not on there right now, so if you wanna make that as a contingent
Okay.
on approval. But other comments have been corrected. and
Yeah, that was one other comment, that if he addresses all the comments, then he will have followed the ordinance.
Okay. Well, let's open the public hearing. Anybody to speak on this matter? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing. Commissioners?
If he can make sure that all the comments are satisfied, then I'm gonna make a conditional approval based on satisfaction of the comments listed.
Okay, so motion to approve, subject to addressing all staff comments.
I'll second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Approved.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Y'all have a great evening.
Thank you very much. Item number 10A, public hearing to approve or deny the following preliminary plats. Reese Lane, Quality Engineering.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. Jim Percy, Jones Walker, 8555 United Plaza, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, on behalf of the applicant. This is a subdivision of 50 lots, approximately 17 and a half acres. It's a pleasure to tell the commission that there are no waivers being requested, no variances being requested. The staff has concluded that this is in compliance with all ordinances and regulations in the parish. The staff recommends approval. We have made several changes in response to requests and comments by the staff. We have addressed all comments by both the staff and the Engineering Review Authority, and we respectfully request approval of this preliminary plat. And I'm happy to answer any questions, and I would request that if there are any comments at the public hearing, that I be given an opportunity to respond to whatever the comments are. But at this time, I'm happy to answer any questions that the commission members might have. And we have technical representatives, if the questions are technical, that we can respond.
Not a problem. You'll be given that opportunity.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Staff, anything from you?
Staff would like to mention that, as was stated, it meets the requirements of the code. We'd also like to mention that at the beginning of the project, a little different project was submitted to staff. We had asked for some changes in the project. Number one was the change in the drainage pattern. They had initially looked at moving the bayou itself, and we asked that they redesign the project in order to keep the current drainage pattern in place. We had also asked for an exit that basically is north and south of the proposed project to give access points outside of the major thoroughfare. And this was to accommodate some of the problems that might occur, because there is a pipeline that runs through the westernmost part of the project. In case of emergency purposes, we wanted to make sure that there was an exit point outside of the highway. All right, so you'll see that on the proposed plat. Other than that, we're available to answer any questions that the commission may have.
And if the commission would permit me just to make a very brief comment on the connectivity issue that Mr. Fournier mentioned just now. With regard to that, the staff did request, and we have on the plat, and you will note the connectivity both to the north and to the south. The connectivity to the north is to Nicholas Street. That is a subdivision that is currently planned, and that street is planned, and the connectivity will in fact occur at that location. However, I want to point out that the connectivity to the south, there is still an issue with that. You will note that even though it shows connectivity to the property line, and the applicant has agreed for a stub out at that location for that connectivity, the issue is there is a strip to the south of that property line commonly referred to, and this is not my term, but it's commonly referred to as a spite strip, where they leave a strip such that there cannot be access across that line. And so I want to make sure that the commission understands that the applicant has fully complied with the request of the staff, but In the comments, you will note that the parish attorney and the parish are going to, in review of the final plat of that subdivision to the south, address whether in fact there can be connectivity to the south. But I want to make clear to the commission that the applicant is happy to provide that. However, I do also want to request, and we can discuss this at any future stage of the development, if in fact connectivity cannot be delivered to the south, that we be allowed to recover that piece of property with a lot, if necessary. But again, I want to commit to the commission, as we've committed to the staff, we are fully prepared to provide that connectivity if in fact it can be acquired. And again, happy to answer any questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
You ready? Let's open up the public hearing. Stacy, you want to call them out one at a time? Let me remind everybody that you have a time limit, that the clock will run, and staff is going to control it. You'll hear a beep. So if you would, just make your comments and keep it to within the time. All right, Stacy?
Corey Schultz.
Hello. Hello. My name is Corey Schultz, and I live on Fenway Avenue. My comments mostly have to deal with potential flooding, lower home values, and the street connecting the neighborhoods. First off, there is absolutely no way that an 1.5 acre retention pond will protect our neighborhood from potential flooding. Neither me or my neighbors want to be in a floodplain. A proposed outpipe from this pond will feed into the ditch behind Fenway Avenue as proposed. Since the date we moved into the house in February of this year, the ditch behind my home has filled either past, up to, or within the foot of my property line 5 times. Once the ditch fills behind Fenway Avenue, water backs up into the proposed Reese Lane project or property on the southern section near my home and the southeastern section of the proposed Reese Lane property. In addition, the water floods the property to the south of Fenway Avenue. Because of the lack of areas to retain water in the proposed property, I will now have to deal with potential issues both on the front and rear of my home. I also have to worry about increasing erosion in the ditch behind me with the 5 different floods because of normal heavy rains. It should be known that the land has an obvious formed creek and at times of heavy rain, and I do have a picture of that, which dumps into the drain across from my house. In times of heavy rain, water fills the ditch in hours and continues into the ditch behind my home for approximately up to 24 hours. That is if the ditch is not full already. In addition, the water in the ditch behind Fenway never drains completely. Also, the land for what appears to be half the proposed neighborhood sits lower than our street. Fact is, where does that water go when the land is built up? It is evident the water consistently stays on the property as it appears to be a wetland, as indicated in my picture, with the type of vegetation and the animals that you hear at night. Rains on Sunday, April 2nd of this year, were very concerning as the water got up to past my property line, which I have a picture of already. However, that was the next morning. I am very concerned about lower property values because 50% of the proposed neighborhood will have lots 15 smaller than the lots on Fenway, and they will also be smaller than lots in the rest of Parker Place Drive. In addition, who would want backyards facing the front of our homes? We would be looking at multi-fence types and colors as there is not a planned neighborhood fence. Lastly, the proposed street connecting our neighborhood is unacceptable for the number of reasons. Can I make one more point?
Please, yes.
And that besides the children in the area, my main concern is the traffic would increase significantly. As we all know, there is a proposed high school in the area with a primary school, and neighbors, people will use our neighborhood as a cut-through. That's the gist of what I have. Appreciate your time.
Can we
Thank
get
you.
them to put the pictures up on thing so we can see?
Do you have that photograph that you could get to us? Right. If you put it under that, we can take a look at it real
Okay.
quick. Lance, you want to help him out?
Yeah. So if you see this, this is the drain across from my house on Fenway Avenue, and this sits lower than the street. And so if you see closely, this path up through here, this turns into basically a heavy stream. And all the water from all of the property, I have no idea where all that water comes from, but all the water that fills the ditch behind my home is not from our property. It's from the property to the north and whatever else is to the north. And so basically what happens is all that water feeds into the ditch behind my home. You could see the properties on Fenway Avenue to the rear, and this is the south of Fenway, and that stake is my property line. And this is the day after the April heavy rain. The water was basically about 2.5 to 3 feet into my property. And this has happened 5 times since February. And I think we could all agree that's nothing compared to what could happen. So again, and then if you look at this again, when this ditch fills, the water stops, the water starts backing up, and it backs up into all of these areas to the south property from basically somewhere around in this area all the way down to the back fence on Parker, or to the backs of the Parker Road homes, and fills up the areas to the southeast on the Reese Lane property. In addition, like I mentioned earlier, the water floods the huge pasture lands behind me, mainly on the northeast corner, and on pretty much up until the areas behind my home on Fenway Avenue. And I'm on lot 96 on Fenway Avenue.
Okay. All right, thanks for sharing the pictures and explaining them. Stacy, next.
Thank you.
Chris Ratcliffe. Hi, my name is Chris Ratcliffe. I live on Parker Place Drive. I want to come from this from 2 points. The first is for the drainage issue, and the second is for the school system. I do work as a teacher at Prairieville Primary. I'm just concerned about how many more subdivisions are we going to be able to take into that school system. We left this past school year with 950 students. Next year, we have an entire 5th grade section outside. We had to take away our computer room and add another section in there, and one of our kindergarten sections and preschool students had to move back outside to accommodate for the number of students we have. So I'm just concerned with Brookstone coming and this subdivision possibly, and the new one off of 42, where are we supposed to put all these children? So that's my concern. You know, we can have 23 students in a classroom, but, you know, after that, we're supposed to get new teachers, but there's nowhere to put them. There are no rooms left in that school. Like I said about the drainage, I don't know if that picture will come up or not, but I live in the pasture behind Fenway Avenue. So this is the ditch he was talking about. My house backs up to this pasture. I don't know if you're familiar with Miss Dawn Alamon. She lives off of Abby James. She would love to be here today, but she was unable to make it. We watch this property flood all the time. You know, like you said, in just a little rainstorm, this is how much water you get. I called the drainage department in May to come take care of a situation in the ditch behind our homes on that section of Parker Place Drive. They came in, they said the ditch was not properly graded, but there's nothing they could do right now. It was going to be 1.5 years before they were able to come properly grade the property. They did come do a little temporary fix, which was a little bit of shovel work, but, you know, I looked in there today, there's still water sitting right behind my house, and it takes forever to dry. You know, my husband's not really able to cut into that area with the, because it's just wet all the time, mosquitoes and everything. So, you know, like I said, it's just, I'm coming from the standpoint of what are we gonna do with all the children that are gonna be coming to these neighborhoods? And not that we don't want them, but there's just, where's the space? And then, like I said, the drainage. If it's gonna take a year and a half to get my drainage fixed, how are we gonna build another subdivision right there? So, thank you.
Courtney Crochet.
Hi, my name's Courtney Crochet. I'm a 16410 Highway 929. The few things that I have that if it is inevitable that this neighborhood does pass is the lot sizes. It does not compare with any of the lot sizes for the neighboring neighborhoods, as well as, you know, the possibility of reducing people's amount that they're getting for their homes. Unfortunately, that doesn't really affect me, but I do have a lot of friends that are in the various neighborhoods surrounding this project. In addition with that, on the Table C, major subdivision guidelines for streets longer than 900 feet, it does have a requirement of a 60-foot. So that would be 7 feet under the 53 that it is proposing. Also to the traffic concerns, prior to moving where I'm at now, I was off of Winborn Boulevard and Shadows of Ascension, and it's kind of the same thing that Parker Place may have, is once that 44 was opened to Winborn through Shadows of Ascension, it created more speeding, more traffic, more crime for the neighborhood there, and I don't want that to happen to the area of Parker Place. Back to what Ms. Ratcliffe was saying, especially is the schools overcrowding. Prairieville Primary has 200 plus over their max enrollment currently, and Prairieville Middle has 150 to 200 over their max enrollment currently, and that's without the 3 subdivisions that she did say, you know, are in plans that would feed into those schools. Also to flooding concerns. When heavy rains do flood, Black Bayou that runs behind my property does back up. It backs up into the Quail Creek area, as well as further downstream by Bayonnes, as that area was flooded in the August flood. But most recently, in that flood that they had the pictures of, it did back up almost over the road at 929 where Quail Creek dumps. And so if they're going to be putting a septic system that potentially services 200 plus homes, how much additional water is that going to be dumping into Black Bayou? And how is that going, and if that's going to have any effect on the back of my property and or downstream, as well as if it will actually be completed correctly, as the Shadows of Ascension Parker Place one had multiple problems with sanitation issues and smell.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Alex Lopez.
Good evening. My name is Alex Lopez. We just moved into Parker Place off of Fenway. I'm actually neighbors with Corey. We have issues with multiple things in the neighborhood. I wanted to address one of the things that was discussed earlier about pipelines crossing driveways. If pipelines crossing driveways were a concern, we wouldn't have any driveways in any subdivisions. I don't know what the regulation is on that, if it's a parish regulation or a city regulation, but there's transmission pipelines feeding these neighborhoods across all these driveways. So that was just one of the concerns I had on that. The other one was the increased traffic. We picked this area because of the neighborhood, because it was a dead-end road. We have 2 small children. A lot of the people in our neighborhood have kids too. The increased traffic would seem like it'd be a #1 priority for this review. The other is the drainage. I too brought some pictures. They're date stamped and have lat long so you can see where they are. Like Corey said, this one was actually, I believe, the rains week before last. It wasn't a big flood, but you can see how high the water got. My lot is lot 95, and actually the outlet is right here. You can see where the water is coming out from the ditch across the road, and I believe this is supposed to feed into the lake, but when it rains, it takes this a long time to drop, and it doesn't take much rain for this to fill up. Let's see. There's more. That's a shot from right behind the house. Some of the other issues that we had discussed was the increase in crime in our neighborhood. Since we moved in, they've had issues with people breaking into cars. Well, if you have extra access into the neighborhood, it's going to give people extra access to get in and do things that that nobody wants to see happen. So that's some of our considerations, and appreciate your time.
Thank you. I'm gonna take a second and just address the pipeline issue just for point of clarity.
Sure.
You're right. We've got petrochemical lines that crisscross South Louisiana all over the place. There's no question about it. Unfortunately, those pipelines do have issues. I live in a dead-end street, and we were very fortunate that when they did rupture a line, it happened to be at the dead end of the street and not at the axis of the street. So when the evacuation order came, we had a way to get out, but we couldn't go home for 12 hours. Unfortunately, that happens from time to time. There's lots of excavation that goes on in this parish, and unfortunately, it's, as they say, stuff happens.
Correct.
We're not talking about, a utility line. We're not talking about a telephone line. We're talking about high-pressure petrochemical lines with a lot of, shall we say, unhealthy things in the tube. So that's the concern here, just to let you know. That same pipeline is along the rear of some of the lots on your property as well. I have them along the rear of my parcel, and it concerns me every day that some knucklehead's going to be digging back there. That's the issue, just to let you know. Okay? We're not worried about just an old pipeline. We're talking about something that's full of petrochemicals that are not healthy.
I understand. But my question is, you've already got two planned accesses, one off of 969 and the other one into the proposed neighborhood. So why would you need three?
Well, the one to the south that goes to your neighborhood is in question anyway, and the one to the north doesn't exist.
Right, but it is planned already.
It may come, may not come. And the petitioner is willing to abandon the one to the south and recover the land, but we have no guarantee that that land to the north is going to be developed anytime in the near future.
Okay.
So,
Caroline Watsey.
Good evening. Caroline Watson, 39447 Meadowbrook Avenue. I'm here representing Quail Creek Homeowners Association, and I want to thank all our neighbors from the Parker and 929 and all the surrounding streets that are here tonight. Yes, drainage is an issue. And by the way, Parker and all their problems, well, if we all remember, a year ago, there was a nice little quote. It was also in the paper. According to the parish engineering, Rondeboro drainage for the area adjoining Brookstone. Oh, is that the one that's in question? Because I believe it doesn't even exist except for on paper because it doesn't have all its permits yet. For the area adjoining Brookstone has been adversely affected by 7 or 8 different plots, submitted by 3 different engineering firms in the recent past. Somewhere along the chain of developments, there was a miscalculation. My question to the board and to whoever is doing all these surveys is, has this miscalculation been straightened out? Because otherwise, everything that has just been done for this new subdivision is based on these old miscalculations. And I would like to have some proof that these have been adjusted so that we know where our errors went, so that maybe that all these nice pictures of flooded areas wouldn't be flooded. Somewhere in the chain of the development, there was miscalculations, and successful developments have successfully worsened drainage. Not my words. Staff's words. Okay? And I just want to bring that to your attention again. And I think we need to see some more proof of how these drainages are going to affect. Black Bayou drains right into Quail Creek. I can show you pictures of my backyard. I don't live off of Black Bayou. I live off of Meadowbrook, which is away from it, a whole street away. And you should see my drainage ditch. It fills up all the time. It's filled up right now. Because I've got Parker, nothing against anybody, but I've got all that water draining. And then Tillotson, it drains religiously. I go through that street all the time coming home just to beat the traffic, so I don't have to sit on 942. So we won't talk about traffic impact because according to the regulations of CSRS, there is no traffic problem and there is no flood problem. They think that's all funny. I agree. It's hilarious. But I'd like to go to a section on CSR's part, which is 18 and 19. 18 is connection to Brookstone, to the north, to Nicholson Street, which doesn't exist. The subdivision doesn't exist, only on paper. My understanding is there's still permits out there that they haven't been granted. If we have anything to do with it, this was the last subdivision we've submitted, and I'll submit them again. I represent over 400 voters. 400. I only have 187 houses in the subdivision. Just remember that. We have some issues. Y'all need to really look this over again. There'll be more and more flooding everywhere.
Brandon Bennett.
Thank you, ma'am. I'll get engineering to address some of your questions.
How are y'all doing? My name is Brandon Bennett. I live in Parker Place as well. I actually live very close to Corey and them. I'm not going to take too much of y'all's time. I'm actually going to echo everything that everybody has came up here and said so far. Drainage is an issue. It's a concern. Traffic obviously is a concern. We do mention something about the safety, I guess, if a pipeline was to rupture. So I do ask, obviously, if things are changed and it does get passed, if we can put some type of a fence up or something where if there wasn't, so we can minimize any kind of through traffic through our subdivision. And if there is some type of emergency, obviously that fence can be opened so they can get out in just emergency purposes. We have many, many kids that live in our subdivision, and that is a huge concern of ours as far as through traffic and the safety of all of our kids. So also, I do ask you mentioned earlier you would be willing to answer questions. So part of the packet in number 3, it talks about tailwater conditioning. So I'm curious as to what the tailwater conditioning is and how will that affect our subdivision. As well as the study for the traffic, as she just said as well, is that no comment, I think it says in the packet, will just drive around that area at certain times. It's terrible. So, but also, where was the study performed, I ask? How many days was the study performed? And what is considered peak hours versus non-peak hours, as it mentions in the packet? So that is my question for them. But I do ask that y'all deny this request. And to take a little positive out of all this, us in the neighborhood, in Parker Place, we have actually now got to meet a lot of our neighbors, so it's the positive out of all of this. So thank you.
That's always a good thing.
Yeah.
Jeremiah Hall.
Good afternoon. Jeremiah Hall. I live in Parker Place on so I'm just going to say the same things that everybody else has said, but I do want to reiterate the drainage and the flooding of the 2 pieces of property that are directly behind my house on Parker Place Drive. The potential Brookstone subdivision and the Reese Road. Both of those pieces of property on a normal rainstorm will flood anywhere between a foot to 18 inches in some spots. That all drains to a ditch that's right behind my house, and I at least once a month have a foot or more that comes up into my property line, and then during the August flood, it came all the way up to about 3 feet from my house, and I thought I was on the dry side. And it came that close. So that whole piece floods I have not personally seen any kind of drainage improvements in the area to think that, you know, even if retention ponds are built and things are done, that water still has to go somewhere. And I haven't seen anything that would help support that. It may have happened, and I just haven't seen it, but I don't know where that water would go. To address the connection issue, hopefully, it sounds like that is not a done deal, because if that subdivision was tied into Manitoba or right there on Fenway, just like everybody else said, it would create a cut through. And with that high school and, you know, that four-way I've heard is one of the more dangerous intersections in the parish. People are going to avoid that as much as they can, especially around football games, whenever that high school is built, dances, anything that's done, you know, when the school lets out, when the kids show up, people are going to avoid that. And the quickest way to avoid that is going to be to cut through my neighborhood. And we already have issues with some vandalism, theft going on, so that element is coming into our neighborhood. We don't need to give it another way in or a way out. And the people that would come through, the speeding, would just be unacceptable. We've already had an accident that's happened in the neighborhood, and this would just ask for another one. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
may I ask one question to the
Sure.
gentleman?
Absolutely.
Mr. Hall, do y'all have sidewalks in your subdivision?
We do.
Okay. But yet, y'all keep mentioning stuff about children playing in the streets and traffic. Is that just common in that area? I'm not criticizing, I'm just curious, just to enlighten me.
Can I?
No, I'm just
Well,
getting
my question is,
information.
do you have children?
Yes.
Okay. You could ask everybody here. I stand out in my front yard and I watch my kids pretty much every day, and I yell at people driving down the road, and I yell at the other kids in the neighborhood. And as much as I do that, they still cross the street. You've got houses on both sides of our road, and on the side that I live on, there are 4 streets that go out towards the lake, which are just more houses and more kids. So you go from house to house as a child. You know, the smaller ones, of course, you know, they're not going anywhere, but as they get older, they want to go and come and go as they please, and they are supervised, but kids are going to be kids. They do use the sidewalks. We, as parents, definitely get after them when they get out in the street or kick a ball in the road, but things like that are going to happen. We do our part, and I think we're good, but if we were to open that up and double or triple the amount of traffic that comes through our neighborhood, I mean, we might as well just tie our kids up in the backyard.
But the reality of it is that the kids are going to go, they're going to use the curb of the street to launch their bikes
Right.
and jump. They're going to cut across driveways. They're going to do things that are, one would say, oh, that's potentially dangerous. Well, you know what? Waking up in the morning is potentially dangerous, but you got to let kids be kids. And you're right. You're 100%
Exactly
right.
And that's what I wanted you to be able to say. Thank you.
That's not an issue, yeah.
Thank you.
Robert McBride.
No, we had sidewalks. We never used them.
Yeah.
Excuse me, my name is Robert McBride. I live in Quail Creek subdivision, and I really just had some questions about the subdivision being planned for immediately east of 929 and Parker Road. I understand there's 28-acre subdivision planned for that area, and the number I heard from a friend who has been in these meetings was that the subdivision was going to bring in 9,000 cubic yards of dirt for 28 acres. My question is, I have a topography map I think it runs from 18 foot to 22 feet in that area. And the question I have for you guys is, where will the water go when the subdivision is developed? I haven't seen anything, I hadn't seen any plots of the subdivision. And I just, as a neighbor, I live, so the parish took a corner of my lot away from me about 4 or 5 years ago. I'm at the corner of Parker Road and 929. Now, when they took that, I sat in a meeting at Prairieville Primary and was told that there was going to be a roundabout at that intersection. Is there going to be a roundabout? And if so, when? That's been several years ago. Now, I also understand that, and I know there's a pipeline coming from the northwest, as I am in the corner of my lot. It comes across the intersection. I understand it's under the intersection. And then I heard that the oil company wouldn't pay for it. So anyway.
That's true. They don't pay for anything.
Well, I worked for one for 37 years. I know a little about oil companies. And, but the problem I have, I don't see any roundabout. The parish took the corner of my lot, and I paid a lawyer $150, and I took him to papers, and I said, what should I do? He charged me $150 and says, nothing you can do, go home. So I've dealt with the parish before, but not very well. But anyway, I think you guys need to realize the world's changing, the weather's changing, and if you don't believe that, I went right where the subdivision Quail Creek enters into Highway 929. I was leaving one morning, and I started leaving. There was a van parked in the street at that intersection of 929 and Quail Creek Boulevard, or Avenue.
Go ahead and finish your story.
Well, I went around, I had to back up and go around because he was parked in the left turn lane in the street. And I looked, and there was a young guy setting up a tripod across the street. And I'd heard about the subdivision, so I pulled on around him and into that rough driveway that he was setting up his tripod. And I asked him, I said, are you working for the subdivision that's going to be placed here? He said, yes, sir, I am. I'm just doing the survey. And I said, well, good. I took engineering at LSU. I had to have a survey course. So I said, the problem is you guys use lasers. We had telescopes. Anyway, as I spoke to him, I said, I understand you're going to bring in 9,000 cubic yards of dirt. And he said, I just do the survey. And I said, well, look down the street. Looking south on 929, you could see a half a dozen homes that had all their worldly goods out on the street waiting for pickup. That was in right after the August flood. So I'm done, but I understand some of this, but a lot of it, I think we need a little more help on drainage. Thank you.
That's it? All right. We're going to go ahead and close the public hearing. Sean, hate to put you on the spot, but you got a lot of questions you got to answer.
Yeah, I just noted a couple of them. One of them, the easy one, was the commenting that a letter that's compiled between CSRS and staff that we stated there's no traffic or no problems in the area. There's nothing in the letter that states that.
Okay.
The traffic, it says, the traffic impact study, let's get into the traffic part. The traffic impact study policy for Ascension Parish, you have different levels of what you have to analyze based on how many lots you're generating. This project, when it was first analyzed, was based when they had 55 lots, and after they addressed some review comments, they went to 50. So 50 lots in the peak hour triggers 61 trips. Peak hour, more than likely, was probably a 4:30 to 5:30 or 5:30 to 6 of when they said that's the peak. It was greater than the AM.
Right.
The traffic counts were done in October 2016. A lot of times there's comments about, was it school in session, not in session, so it was done. It was in session. The date of the study, just let everyone know, the date of a study doesn't for a traffic study, that's not when they went out and analyzed the cars that day. It's just saying that's the date that they submitted and prepared the report. Okay, so I just want to clear that up. So a project with 61 trips is required to do a threshold 1 study. Okay, a threshold 1 study is you just calculate how many trips you have, and analyze your driveway's ability to get onto Bro Road, or on this one, 929, where they have it labeled on the plat. So that's what they're analyzing. There's not a full study, you're not going down the corridor, and when it says no improvements, what they're meant is, well, it's a pasture right now, so there's no recommended improvements to upgrade a gravel driveway onto 929. So it's not going to analyze the intersection, so everything's perfect, the whole place is fine. Nothing needs to happen now, nothing needs to happen with them coming in. It's just their analysis, just them connecting to 929.
Right.
And so that's the traffic study for this size of development. Now, if it was much larger, based on traffic policy, they've been required to start looking at more and more and more intersections. So I just want to talk a little bit about traffic. I don't know if I didn't address.
No, so to put it into really simple layman terms, the
Yes.
traffic study for a project this size simply requires that they analyze the connection to the major thoroughfare, which is 929.
Yes.
And that's it.
Yes.
Okay.
And they're also required to look at site distance, just to make sure we're going to have trees or obstacles in the way for this entrance, so they'll be able to see it. Okay, so that is the traffic study requirements for a development this size.
Was a traffic study, I know we're talking about now having 2 or 3 different entrances when we tie into the other street. Was the impact of the traffic going through the subdivision to the second entrance included in that study?
No, this traffic study assumed all cars would be only allowed to come on 929. So that would, for them, if you're analyzing the entrance, that's actually more conservative, knowing that if they had this, cars may be moving around other
Dispersing.
ways to get in and out.
But would the traffic being diverted onto in other words, would there need to be a traffic impact study done for the other entrance onto whatever road that ultimately dumps out onto?
You mean
Is it
to the proposed Brookstone? Or
Well,
to the
Nicholas
proposed?
Street.
And then I guess further wherever that
No, they
connects.
wouldn't. Because that doesn't. Yeah. So there's no, like I said, the only thing that they're required to look at was 929.
No, wait, everybody. Look, I'm sorry, public hearing is closed, you know, I hear you. I know, but just give us a chance, give us a chance. If we need to, we'll call you back and ask you to come to the podium. Let's let them address. Schools, talk to me about schools and the parish policy on traffic studies in schools.
Got a question for me? I don't know, when school's presented, it's not come, I know for us, I don't know.
We don't
what-
review, in other words, we don't review school traffic. We're not allowed to do that. That's a separate taxing industry, it's a separate entity altogether. We have absolutely no jurisdiction over schools. We don't even get to see them. They don't even get permitted through us. I don't know what their policies are to look at traffic. Unfortunately, you know, we can't. I mean, once it's there, they're counted, they include it, but we can't, we have no way of including them in the front end on a planning perspective. Right, staff? Right. So that's an unfortunate situation. The same thing with the comment that someone said about classroom capacity and what have you. They have their own competent planning group, and they're constantly looking at that. I've seen articles in the paper in the past about redistricting the parish and stuff like that to address that. We have absolutely no participation, no jurisdiction, or exposure to any of that whatsoever. Talk to me about drainage, Sean. Let's address they had a question about tailwater and what that is, and then a young lady spoke about article that had a lot of
Right.
problems with various engineering firms in that area.
Like, my role in this is just trying to clear up any questions or things that may have heard that may have been.
Correct, yes.
One of them I've heard a couple of times as the new Parker Place 2 adds the ditch behind their house. That
Right.
is actually a proposed a detention pond. Okay, so some people get overwhelmed. They say that's supposed to be a ditch and it's holding water. The water got high. That was designed to be a detention pond. So
To
it's-
retain water.
that is a pond.
For the benefit of the general public, what you may visually perceive to be a ditch that's holding water may very well be what Sean is depicting. It's designed to be a collection to hold water and retain it for a period of time and then slowly have it go back into the groundwater or discharge at a much slower rate. But that's what it is. It's a detention pond. That's the
Right,
way it
and
was designed. That's what's in the
noted on
plat.
the preliminary plat. That was what's in the construction plans for Parker Place 2. It's noted as dry detention pond.
Right.
It's small, yes, but that's what the design, they called it a pond. That's its purpose, to hold water and be to control and release it.
Well, he's addressing the Fenway question.
Yeah.
Sean, do you happen to have the
Yes,
information on the ditch along
Please help me, I'm
Parker?
trying to keep it.
Yeah.
I'm addressing the ditch or dry detention pond behind lots 95, 96, 97 along Fenway Avenue.
Right,
So
okay.
I'm not talking about Parker Place 1, I'm just talking about Parker
Fenway.
Place 2.
Right.
Sorry about that, I was trying to.
No, I appreciate that.
I don't know, how do y'all want me to approach this? Let me just respond to.
So the retention pond is designed to contain a volume of water, and at one end of it, Sean, correct me if I'm wrong, there's a control to discharge that water at a particular rate.
Yes.
Right?
There's no requirements that a water can't get onto your property line for a detention pond space. Where they decide to put the property line, some people's property lines are actually in the middle of ponds.
Right.
Actually across ponds in some places where they own all the way across to the other side. So there's no requirements about how water is to get relative to a property line. The only
That's a much more complex issue, yeah. So Sean, getting back to some of the other
So that
questions.
the proposed, I guess the design for Reese Lane is to utilize a detention pond towards the back. It's shown on the plat that butts up against Parker Place 1. This project will, whatever the water it receives on it within the subdivision will be directed towards the pond that is then run down the same pipe that we were talking about between lots 94, 95 that gets into the pond of, behind Parker Place 2.
Okay, so now we get to the crux of the matter of what the other young lady, the calculations that the engineers have submitted. I mean, I think that what these folks want is it's an understanding of what is going to be the impact of that retention pond, how much higher is the water going to be, and how much more water should they expect to go in there, and what's going to be the effect. It's hard for them to visualize this because right now they're seeing more than enough water, and the fact that they might have a cup of water more added to it might be an issue. So the question is,
All right,
what do the calculations show?
All right, the calculations that were presented, the first step is they calculate how much water is coming through that pipe system now.
Mhm.
Okay, so they call that existing condition. There's a
Right.
flow rate to it. Okay, how much is coming through these fields.
Right.
And then when they design the pond, they send all the water to the pond, then use a smaller pipe to restrict the flow to limit it to that same amount of water that they said, this is what's coming through those fields now. That is sort of, I'm trying to simplify, but that is the purpose of the pond, to receive the water and to release it because the water's coming faster from roofs, faster from roads. Let's
Right.
get into a pond, then use a control pipe to slow it to the water to where it was as a pasture. And we heard there's a lot of water coming through the photos. It's all through the fields, and so there is a lot of water coming. They're allowed to keep sending that same amount of water. They can only do that by choking it down with a pipe.
Right.
So the designs show, the calculations that were presented to us, that whatever water is coming through into that pond system now, coming from the field, is the same amount of water, flow rate, with the proposed detention pond.
So in theory, your net gain is it's zero. It's the same as it is today. I'm a bit confused as to where that came from. Miscalculations, you know, I mean, there's, Sean, did you catch that? You understand what you were saying?
I've known in the past that there was a quote about miscalculations in the area. I haven't presented. I've been.
Excuse me, ma'am. The public hearing is closed. I respectfully ask that you guys give staff an opportunity to address all our questions and the questions that we collected from the folks who spoke. So, sorry, Sean, go
So
ahead.
if the question is, I live in this parish, so yes, I read papers, hear stuff, I've been around long enough. So has there been, I do recall there being comments that there was an opinion from someone that there's been miscalculations done in the area? I mean, there's a time period where we were not here. I haven't received that information to see if there were indeed miscalculations. Was it poorly constructed? Is it being poorly maintained? There's a lot of factors that goes in if there's a drainage problem. Okay, so I haven't received any of those information to say it was a specific calculations, poorly built, poorly maintained. So I can't comment on that. I just know what's presented for this project. It was a drainage study that accounted for what was in the calculations for Parker Place 2. What water is allowed to go through Parker Place 2 into, I called the dry detention pond earlier. This project's requirement is to make sure they limit how much water gets to them, the same amount of water that goes into Parker Place 2. So that was what was in this drainage study that was submitted to us for this project.
Okay. Last question. That there was a allegation that there's 9,000 cubic yards of dirt that are going to be moved in here to raise the elevation of this
I've
land.
heard, I maybe even spoke to the gentleman once before, but if he was referring to Brookstone or even this project, if 9,000 cubic yards, might have some other engineers in here if they'll do the same thing. If it really is 9,000 cubic yards, it's one of those things we're playing with numbers. If you do 9,000 cubic yards, I'm putting myself on the spot to get exposed here. I did quick math. 18.5 acres of a project. That's an average of 4 inches of dirt on this project. The 9,000 sounds like it's a foot or 2 foot. It's an average of 4 inches dirt on this property that would be moved.
Right.
Okay, a lot of times we're moving dirt, you're digging a hole to place it over on this side. So sometimes it's usually a net, you're creating more volume than what it was before.
Originally,
so
correct.
Just if that's the number, if 9,000 is the number, for applying 18 acres, it's around 4 inches average of fill. And according to this project, you know, the base flood elevation is 18 and a half for a 100-year storm event. The elevations on this property is 21, 20. So when it comes to base flood elevation, they're not really needing to fill this property up to protect themselves from a flood event because they're already high enough.
Okay.
I wouldn't be surprised if their challenge is actually to minimize how much dirt they have to dig, probably minimize the cost of the project.
Right.
So there's some projects that are made to get dirt.
They may be giving away dirt, in other words.
That's the design engineer's decision to figure
Right.
out how much, what they want to dig and how much they want to bring up.
The public hearing is closed, sir. I'm sorry. Okay. All right. So staff, I'm gonna ask you a question. Do we have any idea when the development to the north is going to come forth? Are they in permitting? How far along permitting are they?
I'm sorry, all I've known is they're in the process of getting construction plans reviewed. That's one step. They have to go get all the necessary permits, everything else before they even request a pre-construction meeting. No one's made that request for a meeting yet, so I don't know where they are in the process. We don't
Okay.
manage that for them. We just get on the receiving end and
But they are
review
working
what's
on it.
submitted.
It appears that they're working on it. One last question. So clearly, we can't rely on the extension to Nickel Street happening concurrent with this project. But is there a way for us to establish a temporary connection that doesn't require full construction of a road. Maybe just an apron, and allow have a temporary road until the road to the north is constructed, and then they would abandon that and convert it, even if they get to recover it for a lot.
If I understand the question, Ms. Julio, you're looking at a connection going north to Nichols Drive?
I'm looking at
correct?
the connection going south.
Going
Is there a
south.
way that we could make that a temporary connection where it's not a full construction of a fully paved road, maybe just an apron at Fenway, and let the rest of it be a gravel road for use for emergency purposes, and then let them abandon it at a later date, like the attorney requested, and have them recover that 51st lot?
Right. Well, as you know, there's a 15-foot drainage servitude, I'm sorry, a 12-foot utility servitude on Fenway Avenue on the very north side.
Right.
That portion that would make the connection going south to Manitoba would have to be purchased by the parish. So we'd have to do a taking to acquire that piece of property in order to make that connection.
Well, and
As
that
it-
may
as it
take
exists
longer.
right now,
Yeah.
we would either have to get permission, or I'd have to ask legal in order, what our options are in order to make a temporary connection. But, right now, we have to cross that, we have to acquire the servitude in order to make a connection.
Okay. I'm just thinking long-term versus short-term. Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
I had a question for
Chairman
the
Chason.
engineer. In looking through this, and I see this pop up in a lot of these, it says the engineering, for the drainage impact study, the engineering review agency has not performed a detailed numerical check of the analysis submitted. So are y'all not checking to make sure that the studies, the inputs, the parameters that are being given to y'all are accurate? And if not, why? And I think part of this goes back to, because if I recall correctly about the comment she made about the miscalculation, and I seem to recall, I was not here when that was heard, but there was one subsequent to that. I think it was one of the Parker Place additions, where there were, the developer who was doing that came in and said they actually had to dig the pond deeper than they were anticipating because of the miscalculation. And I know multiple people before this committee had admitted that a miscalculation was made, that no one could figure out what it was and why or how to fix it. And so if that's downstream from where this is, then, and that's not fixed, then we're not remedying the drainage issue that was caused.
So you may ask the question?
Yeah, I'm sorry. So I guess one is, why are we, why is no check of the analysis being performed to make sure that there's no miscalculations, so that we know that we're, garbage in, garbage out, right? So we make sure we're not putting garbage into the analysis and are getting legitimate
Right. Basically, we're
results.
making a statement as CSRS or any engineering review agency, even as DPW, the parish. We are not the design engineers. We're not the ones that go to the fields to determine how much needs to be surveyed. We're not the ones choosing the drainage models, not choosing the input parameters. We're not choosing these things. We're not doing all the things you do in-house to be able to say we are designing this, okay? We're reviewing, we just get filtered what comes to us. What I'm saying, they provide it to us, saying they did the checks. This is what they did. We're looking at it. Is their approach make sense? They have their stuff, but we don't have the drainage models. We're not modeling these things for us. So the intent is saying we are not designing, we are not analyzing, we're not grabbing models, we're not modeling, we're not doing the engineering work. Okay, so you can imagine if that was the case, that would imply that we're designing every single project in Ascension Parish. We're not. We're reviewing what's presented to us. Okay,
Well,
so
and
that's
Sean-
what that is saying is we see what they're putting on the input and we see what's coming on the output on the end, but we're not in the middle of the models. We're not doing the design effort. So maybe it's a bad way of phrasing, but we're not designing.
Well, and at the same time, the developer's engineer is the one who still holds the liability. So we want to make sure that isn't breached. Sean, if you don't mind, I think what I'd like to do is have your experts come and address some of these questions as well.
I'll call them up as the commission wants to, if I can just make a couple of preliminary comments. You've heard comments about lot size. What you'll actually see on the plat is that some of the lots in the proposed subdivision are larger than the lots in Parker Place. Some of the lots are actually smaller, but actually fewer of the lots are smaller. Some are actually larger. With regard to traffic, and I want to make sure, and I think the commission understands what I said before, but I want to reiterate. It was at the request of the parish that the connectivity to the south was actually proposed. And the reason for that was, if you read in the engineering review for the traffic study and in the staff comments, there is an engineering provision in the ordinance here that talks about having at least more than one ingress and egress point from a subdivision like this. So that in addition to the ingress and egress at Bro, there needs to be at least one more. You've questioned about the development to the north. There will definitely be connectivity to the north. If this commission or the staff approves the removal of the connectivity to the south, as I've indicated before, that is fine. That was not proposed by the applicant, and that's fine with the applicant if you can figure out that that's what the staff and everyone is comfortable doing. But we are doing in this plat what the staff requested for that purpose.
I just to respond to you, my concern is that there is no guarantee that the one to the north will come.
And I understood clearly.
Have a public safety issue that.
Yeah, I understood clearly what your communications were on that issue. I just want to make sure that however it gets resolved, the commission fully understands what the applicant is prepared to do. We're prepared to do it either way. Now, finally, with regard to drainage, and I'm going to call the one of our consultants up. What the engineer said is absolutely correct on a couple of issues, and I want to just very briefly address this. First of all, what the engineer for the parish does is they don't redo, as he said, the engineering study. It would be similar to an audit that someone performs, a grab sample or something like that. They review the methodology. But these are licensed professional engineering firms that the commission for years, commissions all over the state of Louisiana, parishes all over the state, and cities have to rely on in the submission of that. And they have their own professional responsibility if there is an issue. But in this case, as the engineer has indicated, it meets the standards, the methodology meets the standards, and based upon their review, and he can correct me if I'm wrong, they haven't seen any issue with the drainage study. But I did want to point out one thing. When he was talking about drainage that currently exists, and then suggesting that there not be any increase in the drainage, that is not to suggest that what this drainage study says is that precisely the same amount of drainage will go to the south as currently moving in that direction, because that is not what the drainage study says. The drainage study actually says that with the construction of this subdivision, there will be a reduction in the drainage from this property to the south. The natural drainage already is to the south, to the rear of the property, as well as to the front, to the south, to Black Bayou. I don't want to suggest, and what I would request of the members of the public, because this is all very sincerely generated comment, and we completely understand that. But it would be very helpful, and they can obtain copies of the drainage study itself and the traffic study themselves, and you will then see, and I'll call the consultant up to discuss the actual numbers. But what the proposed drainage for this site is, and what the drainage study says is, in those flood events, there's actually a reduction in the drainage. And I'll ask him to come up and address that very quickly.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Jeff Loop with Quality Engineering.
Before you get started, hang on for a second. Before you get started, I want to ask again the general public to please, refrain from the gallery comments. We're trying to pay attention to one person at a time. Go ahead.
So just as Mr. Jimmy was stating, the pre-development flow into Parker Place Phase 2 is actually approximately 14 CFS. We want to get into numbers. And post-development, we're proposing to send 5 CFS to it. So we're reducing it by more than half. We'll actually be somewhere between 30 and 40% of the pre-development flow that goes to their detention pond.
Well, just for the benefit of the public, so they know what that is, those are cubic feet per second, correct?
Yes, sir.
So where's the other 9 going?
That's the function of the detention pond. That's why all subdivisions in Ascension Parish require a detention pond. What it does, it provides a storage volume for the runoff from within the subdivision. All the roadway drainage is going to go directly to the detention pond, where it's going to be stored and released at a slower rate, actually slower than the pre-development rate.
Mr. Loop, you also there was also stated that more CFS will be flowing into Black Bayou, and will that also help alleviate any issues with the current detention pond along Fenway Avenue?
We will have no increase to Black Bayou, and we'll have no increase to the Parker Phase 2 or Phase 1 detention ponds by use of our proposed detention pond. For Black Bayou, we don't increase the flow in the 10-year, the 25-year, or the 100-year. We're reducing in each one of those storms. To Parker Phase 2, we detain for the 10 and the 25. So we're actually reducing the flow to that pond by more than half.
From 14 to 5.
Yes, sir. That's the 10-year numbers, which is the design criteria for these subdivision by ordinance is the 10-year storm. But we went ahead and detained for the 25-year storm as well.
Okay. Any other questions from the commission?
I have one more question, and this was actually directed to the engineer, Mr. Sean, and this was about the traffic study performed. I noticed the date of the traffic study, and that happens to be only approximately 2 months after the flood, where the residents in that area were displaced.
No, what?
To be polite about it. We also did not have Santa Maria High School, Lake Primary, Galvez, and other school areas involved. They were all displaced. What type of counts were we had, and can we recommend? Can we understand that those counts might be a little misunderstood because we didn't have that population that would normally be there? Is that something that was taken under consideration?
This project required a Threshold 1 study, which means you look at your entrance relative to all the cars on that road. So even if they had 4 times the amount of traffic that you counted on that road at that day, there's no required improvements because you're only analyzing your driveway entrance onto a road. So basically, it was intended in the traffic study. Imagine if this was an existing intersection already, and then you're adding on to the back of it. Then you have a new subdivision, more traffic, and then you start doing an additional analysis on it, okay? So because this level of study is not analyzing Parker Road, any of the intersections, not looking at Parker Road, 929, 42, it's just how many cars are coming down the road? Would there be a concern with an entrance, the subdivision, not the people driving down the road, but the entrance itself? So that would not have no bearing it would not require improvements because the project itself is adding an entrance. So I'm trying to, now if this was a higher threshold study, let's say a 2, where now we have to look at intersections, count all the intersections, count all the traffic, see what level of services, then apply your subdivision's traffic, that the timing of when you count the cars, yes, that would be an absolute issue, would be an absolute problem. But for this one, a Threshold 1 study's amount of cars, it wouldn't change the results of just saying that's the amount of cars that are out there. We're putting in entrance right here. We looked at the site distance, and that's all that needs to be looked at based on your traffic impact study policy.
And do we have any type of method to consider the fact that we're going to also add Brookstone on top of this? That's not taken into account on the traffic study.
No.
No, not this time. Not this time. I'm going to I'm sorry, Chairman. I'm going to make probably a very unpopular comment that's probably going to get everybody cringing, but here goes. You know, traffic in Ascension Parish is despicable. I mean, it's horrible. I mean, for me to get out of where I live, it's a roll of the dice. It really is. But you know, every time that we've made an effort to go do something about it, it seems like there's no appetite to fund it. But we don't want to pay for the problem. We don't want to pay to fix the problem, but we all want to complain about the problem. And then, of course, our legislatures, this is, may remind you that Broad Road is a state highway, and we don't seem to have the appetite in Baton Rouge to do anything about that either. I share your pain about the traffic. I live on a very busy road. I have an intersection that's life-threatening for me to go through every day. But we don't have an answer to solve the problem. We simply don't. Nobody wants to cough up the money, and nobody wants to do it. That presents a whole array of other problems. I mean, we have no basis in the code to say, oh, oops, the traffic is too high. We don't have that provision in the code. We also don't have a provision. I raised a question at another application where the level of service on the road was an F level of service, and they were going to add traffic to it. And I asked the question, so what's the meaning of having a level of F minus? And what happens next when we have an F minus minus? At what point do we step up to the plate and either write an ordinance that says you can only develop when a road has a minimum level of service, or we step up to the plate as citizens of the parish and citizens of the state of Louisiana and say, we're prepared to pay to solve that problem so we can maintain a quality of life. Seems to me that neither option is available to us because nobody's willing to do that. I'm sorry if it sounds offensive to some people, but that's the reality that we're in. And I would encourage you all to think about it and think about the obligations that we, as residents of Ascension Parish, and our elected officials have to solve the problem. But we can't solve it here. We don't have the rules and regulations in place to do it. Staff, any other comments from you guys? Commissioners, any other issues from you?
Well, my only other comment I had is I mean, Mr. Fournier did enlighten us on it, is the servitude of Reese Lane to the south, and that's the extension of the turn in there. It was kind of mentioned that in order to have that, there would have to be a taking, perhaps. Is that a possibility, or is that something that we would have to go to an ordinance-based issue on?
That would require council action in order to do that, yes.
It's complicated.
Yeah.
Not that easy. I'm going to...
Can I say something unpopular?
Yeah, please. Please do.
And this may get me yelled at too, but I agree about the traffic issues. Part of the problem with the traffic in this parish is everybody wants their subdivision to be isolated one way in, one way out. And so as a result, you have like 4 roads in this parish that actually go anywhere because you have no actual street grid. And every time we propose to make a street grid, everybody complains because they don't want the traffic coming through their neighborhood. So one easy fix to the traffic problem would be to connect all the neighborhoods and have an actual street grid to where when you have a wreck on one road, there's other ways to get places as opposed to funneling all the traffic onto 4 roads. But nobody wants to do that either, as evidenced today. But with that, I'm going to make a motion to deny the subdivision. Made a motion to deny.
Second. Huh? Do you have a second?
Give me a second, please. Not a second to the motion. I'm considering.
May I suggest
For your
to
motion,
Commissioner Chason?
you have to say why.
May I make a suggestion, Mr. Chason?
Go ahead.
I think the access to the south, right, has a public safety issue. However, there's no guarantee that they're going to get it because of the thing. And even in the event that they do get that taking, it's since the subdivision to the south is a relatively small subdivision, right? It's probably reasonable, given that the petitioner would like to recover that land. It may be reasonable to approve it with the condition that they have to build it, right, on a temporary basis, fence it for emergency purposes only. And when the connection to the North Nicholas Street it's available and physically present, then they can abandon it and they can recover the land and convert it to a lot.
Well, I'm still concerned about the drainage issues, so that doesn't
Solve your drainage
alleviate, right, so. So do I need to state reasons for the motion, or do we
Yes,
have to
you
wait
have
till
to,
there's a
you have
second?
to provide a public safety and welfare issue.
I move to deny based on the health, safety, and welfare of the community. This area is an area that already has significant drainage issues. There were representations in prior meetings before the commission about a drainage miscalculation that was done in the area that has caused the area to experience flooding, and there's been no evidence that that miscalculation has been remedied. From a safety standpoint, there's also was a mention about the school's overcapacity. I actually have kids who attended Prairieville Middle and know that a lot of their classes, entire fifth grade, is in temporary buildings outside. That's an area where tornadoes have hit in that area recently, in fact, very close to the school, and it creates a safety issue, and we're only compounding that by adding additional students to our school that can't handle the students. That's actually, I think it's Prairieville Middle, but I think it's Prairieville Primary.
Can't use the school. School can't be part of the issue.
I can consider the safety of the
You can
students.
consider the safety.
I can consider the safety of the students.
Okay.
The drainage and that, the parish is, as also was mentioned, about 1.5 years to 2 years behind on drainage maintenance, and I'm aware of that because I've been trying to get an issue on the drainage in front of my property cleared since last August, and I'm told I think I'm around May of 2018. So the parish, as it is, can't handle and keep up with the drainage maintenance as it is, and we're only attempting to compound the problem by adding more people and more drainage issues, and so that's another reason why I would make the motion to deny for the public safety, health, and welfare of the community.
I'm going to second the motion. I'm going to state my reasons, very similar to what Mr. Chasson is saying. I have not been convinced that the drainage given forth is going to be suffice. We do have a backlog. I am very concerned about that. My second is specifically stated for the health, safety, and community service for this area. I also understand that we have numerous constituent reports, and I'm taking them into consideration. I am also taking into consideration the facts, and the facts are that the engineering study was done. It has met code. However, due to my other stated reasons, I am voting to deny.
So we'll go through roll call. Commissioner Sheikh Snyder,
I vote to approve the denial.
Commissioner Chason,
I vote yea on the denial.
I vote nay on the denial.
Chairman doesn't vote. All right, to approval, it's, your petition is denied, the vote of 2-1. If I could ask everybody to, as you walk out, if you could keep it down, thank you. It's just, All right, next item, item number 11A, Myrtle Grove Townhomes. Would you go ahead?
Chad Stevens, MR Engineering, 9345 Interline Avenue.
Again, if you guys are out there in the audience, if you're going to talk, would you please step outside? Thank you. I'm sorry, sir, go ahead.
Chad Stevens, MR Engineering, 9345 Interline Avenue, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, 70809. I'm here tonight representing the developer, Mr. Corbin Ladner. We're here tonight to ask for final approval of Myrtle Grove Townhomes based on the staff's recommendation to approve, ensuring that all comments are addressed from the final plat review and from the final inspection. Here to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Staff?
Yes, I mean, we recommend approval contingent on the completion of all outstanding punch list items and any other items that need addressing.
All right, going to go ahead and open up the public hearing. Anybody to speak on this item? If nobody signed up? All right, we'll close the public hearing. Any comments from the commissioners?
The only comment I had is this is very similar to what we dealt with previously off of Post Office Box Road. This area has already been zoned in this, and it is following along.
And you have no open issues, all inspections are done?
Yes, we've done the final inspection.
Everything's done?
We've addressed,
Okay.
I think we have one comment left on the plat. I think we have one small lingering issue on the final inspection that they're handling in the field.
All right, so we would need a
Motion to approve
subject-
contingent
yeah.
on the staff recommendations.
Second the motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, item number
Thank you.
11B has been pulled from the agenda. Staff report,
Staff has no report of this.
engineering?
Yes, engineering, there are currently 11 subdivisions under construction at this time, and approximately 3 other projects that are in the construction plan review phase at this time. That concludes the report.
And then we would like a motion to,
Motion to adjourn.
Second. We don't
In
usually
favor?
second that one, but yeah, I'll second it if we need.
all right, we're going to take a, we're going to take a 5-minute break and then reconvene as is on the commission. Thank you.